So I'm assuming this one's totaled. And but
you knew what a totaled car looked like.
there was no question about it, because we had went from, I turned a corner one night on Broadway in Albany, drove into the Gaslight Tavern. They had plywood over the basement windows, and I drove into the brand new Impala, and the motor came back into the seat. I hit my nose on the steering wheel, and so I got out of the car, had no money left. I had drinking my whole paycheck up, and walked down towards Colson's and found a dime on the street. And I figured I'd call Marsh Home and Chevrolet and have them come get the car. And I got no answer, so I called the police. And they informed they were looking for the body under the car. Because of me hitting my nose on the steering wheel, they thought that they were looking for a body. And so it was just, and for that accident there, the only thing, I needed my ex-wife to bring me a document saying it was our car, because they said, you are going to jail if we can't prove whose car it is. And as a game, she thought she may not show up with the registration for the brand new car. And at that time, I'm saying to myself, I was lucky that she brought that. And, you look at it, when I look at it later, I'm saying to myself, there was no luck in that deal. And it wasn't luck the other 5 times, when I totaled these cars. And that was the hardest thing to all of a sudden understand, because I'm out driving one evening, in 1974, and all of a sudden, I see these lights in my mirror. And so I pull over, and the cop comes up to the side of the car and says, do you know why I pulled you over? And I said, was I weaving? He said, weaving? He says, you came out of Route 4 and came head right towards my police car and did not flinch. And he said, so I followed you for 2 miles, not knowing what I was going to do with you, because you were almost into Rensselaer. And he said, something must have finally caught your eye, and you stopped. And so that evening, I went through the whole process, didn't go before a judge that evening. So I had to go back a week later before the judge. So in going before the judge, I thought I would be a hero and put my son in one arm and walk up there and like I'm the proud father and all this stuff. And not knowing the type of person that I was standing in front of, that this judge took responsibility for what I was doing, because he checked my driving record. There was no tickets, so he couldn't get me for any previous drunk driving. He said, do you work days or nights? I said, I work days. He said, why don't you lie? He said, all your accidents are at 2 or 3 in the morning. He said, if you were coming from work or anything, he said, but you're out from the time that you leave work till 2 or 3 in the morning. And it was a fact. But luckily for me, he wanted to do something. He said that if I couldn't do something for myself, that he would do it for me. At that time, they were just starting the spark clinic at St. Peter's Hospital. And it's really hard to believe that, that 36 years later, I'm looking at a judge. I went back to see him after 33 years and said, what do you say to this man? He saved my life. He showed me something that I didn't have a clue what we were looking at the time, and he knew it. He knew I didn't have a chance. But by sending me to St. Peter's, they had one restriction. During the 8-week course that they had at St. Peter's, I had to be sober. And of course, I knew from my actions that I could not drink in between, because I would never make the 8 weeks. So for 8 weeks, I didn't drink.
Yeah, that's what, 60 days as opposed to the 40 of Lent.
Yeah, now all of a sudden
it's another 20 days.
We're trying to set a new record here. I'm saying, what am I, crazy or what? So at the end of the 8 weeks, the person that ran the program up there, Robert Duffy, he said, what's your plans for tonight? And he knew well what my plans were. Right beyond St. Peter's, not, it probably wasn't 1,000 feet away. There was a bar that I had eyed for all this time. I'm saying, well, now is my time. But he says to me, well, you're all done with the program. And he says, I'm sending a judge a note saying that you were here. And that you had no problem with the class. So everything was fine. But this Rob Duffy says, you know, why don't you hang around here for a while? And I'm saying, yeah, you're okay. Hang around here for a while. I've already made it through 8 weeks. He says, I'm wondering whether, he says, if your life has been okay for the last 8 weeks, why don't you hang around and see what happens? He says, you couldn't make it here for a year. And with him coming up with that answer, I said, well, I think I can make it here for a year. And luckily for me, if I hadn't been given that challenge, I probably would have walked right to the corner bar and started over. But I was able to return to the judge. The judge says, do me a favor, don't come back here within a year, because he did not process the ticket. He put it in his desk drawer. He said, do not come back. And for me, when I first saw that, I'm thinking, you know, I'm looking at what my record had been. I hadn't made a year of anything in my life. I'm saying, what do I do from here? So I decided to stay on. I stayed on there and went to AA meetings, and everything was going right along. Then all of a sudden, I take my son to a party one time with the in-laws, and I wasn't at this pool where an accident had happened. All of a sudden they said my kid bumped his head. So I said, well, I'll take him home. And so I lived in Ravenna at the time, so we're leaving Rensselaer, headed towards Ravenna, and the kid doesn't stop crying. And so my ex-wife's sitting there, and I'm saying, we got to do something, so we take him to OB Med. And while we're there, all of a sudden the kid turns blue and starts dropping off. And I'm explaining to people what happened to this child. And I'm a short time off of alcohol. And I'm saying, what am I doing here? And so for 4 days, it was touch and go whether the kid would make it. I didn't know that someone had thrown my child into someone else's head. And I'm trying to explain to the hospital staff, to policemen, that, oh, he bumped his head. And they're starting to look at me like, we may have a set of handcuffs for you if you just continue this story that he bumped his head. Because they nearly killed my kid that night. And never told me what had happened. So luckily for me, I called the person that had thrown him. I didn't know it. I said, you might want to come up and be with your sister. I think we're losing Eddie. So they came up, and he was able to tell the police what happened. But I was fine with that.
And you didn't drink?
I didn't drink through those 4 days, but when it was over, when I walked up there and said, all of a sudden,